Question 1, Part A. What is your overall response to the role of propaganda plays in shaping perspective about people of other cultures? Part B. Do you see evidence in ethnic-focused propaganda today? Well, depending on how propaganda is presented to the public, it either can provide a positive or a negative view to anyone. if that if that's the only format available to someone, they could develop a picture that could be completely wrong about another culture. So propaganda needs to be taken very carefully when they establish that, so people do not get the wrong impression about people of other cultures. As of today, have there been any evidence of ethnic-focused propaganda? Through commercials that you see on TV and even billboards in different parts of our country, yes, they do have ethnic focused on whether it be black, African American culture, even white Americans. There are still propaganda out there that is ethnically focused. Question 2. In segment 17 of the Propaganda Wars, the narrator of the U.S. government documentary closes with these words: "We are setting a standard for treatment of people who may have loyalties to an enemy nation. We are protecting ourselves without violating the principles of Christian decency." What is your reaction to that statement? I actually found it hypocritical. At that time, it's like they threw aside any and all Christian morals or values when they just decided to create these prison camps to throw in the Japanese Americans in our country. It was more of a reactive move than a thought out process, because they even took other Asians and threw them into these camps as well. So there were Chinese and Thai people who were also in these prison camps, but no one took the time to actually stop and think of what they were doing. Question 3. What are your reactions to the overall message conveyed by the United States government through this explanation for forcing Japanese Americans into internment camps? Again, I believe our country was quick to react to the situation at hand. But if you also look at the historical past, there is evidence of being quick to react in different situations that didn't have a positive outcome. So in some ways, I'm not surprised that our government's actions. Question 4. What are your reactions to hearing about the historic event the Japanese internment camp experienced from the perspective of the actor George Takei, a Japanese American witness? It was kind of disheartening to think that our country acted like this. You would think that we would have learned by now from all the other past historical events where people have gotten thrown into prison camps or were enslaved. Especially, for example, with Hitler and what he did over in Germany with the concentration camps. They were just quick to react and didn't think out what happened. I think the one thing that really stood out to me was the fact that they all were required to take a loyalty test to see whether or not they were truly going to be loyal to our country. And with 2 questions, it just really determined whether or not they were going to be loyal or not. And that forced them to move into another camp. And those conditions were harsher. But to know that even after his time there, he still loves our country and still supports America. It just blows my mind. Question 5. If you were to engage in some type of ongoing cross-cultural ministry with the Japanese American upon their release from the internment camps, what would this ministry be? And what first steps would you take to begin? If I was alive back then, um, I think the type of ministry that we would be building with those Japanese Americans from after being released is rebuilding trust. I honestly believe that many of those Americans lost their trust with their government. And then we'd have to help them find places to live and continue providing food and shelter and helping establish building, giving them jobs and help getting them back on their feet. But first and foremost, creating the trust and creating the love of Christ between them and us is where we have to start.